What's up, guys? As people file in, I'll again point you guys to the podcast we started this year. It's called The Red Zone. We did post a little late this week. We didn't have it today. I'm going to be talking to Vince Beagle this evening for the podcast, and you can kind of hear that. I think Thursday morning. I'm going to post it tomorrow morning. So if you want to hear our latest podcast with Vince Beagle, it will be up tomorrow morning. Seems like more people are filing in here, so if you guys have any questions about the Badger football team, just put them in the comment box, and I'll do my best to answer them. So let me know what you guys want to talk about. Obviously, Corey Clement's return was pretty big. No, I don't smoke weed. Yeah, Corey Clement's return was pretty big. He obviously only 11 carries, and he gets over 100 yards and 3 touchdowns, and would have gotten a 4th touchdown if he kind of didn't slow it because he wasn't 100% on that 58-yard run. I think he'll just continue to get healthier and keep getting, I guess, better and better. But obviously it was a good game for him to come back because Rutgers was obviously had a pretty poor run defense. I talked to John Settle yesterday, and it was a really interesting conversation. Really interesting conversation I had with him because he was telling me that Dare Ogunbowale is going to remain the starter over Clement for the rest of the season. Regardless of whether Clement's 100% or not, he said the split we saw on Saturday against Rutgers was probably the split we'll see the rest of the season. Now, I don't know if I believe him or not. It seems a little absurd. He said he wanted to give Clement 15 to 20 plays and Dare 30 to 40. And if Clement's 100%, I just don't really understand why you would limit him to that kind of plays. He talked about wanting to get both of the guys, fresh to the fourth quarter. But if Clement's 100%, I don't know. I mean, I had a hard time believing him. I do have a story up online with his comments on madison.com. I tweeted it out last night. It is some pretty interesting comments. I'm not sure if he's, if that's just really what they're going to do, or if he's trying to motivate Clement, or what it is. But as of right now, he tells me he expects Dare to start the rest of the year and take the majority of the snaps. What else do you guys want to talk about? We got an hour on here, so we got quite a bit of time. You guys got any questions for me? Anything you guys want to talk about regarding the Badgers or the Big Ten or college football in general? I mean, I know the playoff poll came out. The first playoff committee poll came out last night. That was pretty interesting to see Alabama number 4. I am a Alabama graduate, but I was a little surprised to see them at number 4. I think they have been more impressive than some undefeated teams that they're ahead of. Like, I think they've been more impressive than Michigan State. Obviously, they have had a tougher schedule than Iowa. I could kind of see, and of course Baylor and TCU, I thought were going to be ahead of them, but their schedule's been pretty weak so far. But their schedule's going to pick up, so I think if Baylor or TCU stay undefeated, they probably got a pretty good chance of passing up Alabama, especially if Ole Miss doesn't lose and Alabama doesn't make it to the SEC title game. But it's interesting to see kind of where the Big Ten teams were ranked to. Ohio State obviously been number 1 all year, and they were number 3 behind Clemson and LSU. And then having Michigan State, I believe it's 6 and Iowa at 9, or maybe it was 7 and 9. Can't remember. It's pretty interesting, and obviously the Badgers didn't make the poll, but that doesn't really matter. They're not going to make the playoffs anyway this year. So, I don't really understand why the playoff committee does the top 25 anyway. It's not like the 20 through 25 teams have any chance of getting back up there. But Um, sorry, I had to block someone there. I'm not going to sing a song. No, sorry. I'm not going to do that. But if you guys, want to ask any questions about the team, just send it my way. Got Maryland this week. That should be a pretty easy win. I feel kind of stupid because earlier in the season, actually before the season started, I kind of thought this Maryland game would be a little tricky for the Badgers. I thought, going on the road to a place that they haven't played before, I thought Maryland had maybe a little bit more talent than they actually do. Obviously this Maryland team is doing a lot worse than I thought they were going to. I thought this is going to be a tricky game, but I expect Wisconsin to go in there and beat them pretty handily. We're talking about college football, not the NFL right now. You're more of a rugby fan. Yeah, the NFL is professional football. This is collegiate football we're talking about, so a little bit different, I guess. It's the same game, though. This Maryland game, I expect the Badgers to go in there and win pretty handily. Obviously, with Clement back, that really helps your offense. Even if he is only getting 11, 12 touches, he's a guy that can break those long plays that the Badgers haven't had this year. As good as Dari's been, as good as Dari Ogunbowale has been, he hasn't broken those real long runs. He's got a couple, around, I think he's got a couple 30-yarders or something like that. But that 58-yard run Clement broke against Rutgers, the Badgers haven't had that this season, really in the run or the throw game, to be honest. Obviously, Alex Erickson's had a couple deep catches, but I think when you get Clement back and you have that threat, that home run threat in the backfield, that's really going to help the offense. The offensive line continues to get a little better each week. Obviously, there's still some issues there, particularly in pass protection. But I think the offense is getting better, and facing a team like Maryland, who has thrown 23 interceptions in 8 games, I think the defense is going to probably get a couple picks, I would imagine. I think the last time Maryland threw less than 2 interceptions in a game was week 1. So you can expect the Badgers to create some turnovers on Saturday and put the offense in some good positions. And, I think as far as the score goes, probably go, probably say maybe something like 30. I haven't come up with one yet. Maybe 38-13, 34-13, something like that. I think it'll be a pretty comfortable win. You guys got any score predictions for this one? I do not play, so no, I don't have a position. I just cover the team for the newspaper here in Madison. So, don't play for the Badgers, no. Any Badgers fans out there want to ask me anything, get any insight on anything? Crap. I will also encourage you to check out, our film room piece we do every week. Every Monday and every Thursday, on Monday I break down the previous game, kind of focus on Wisconsin's team more. And then Thursday I kind of, look at the upcoming opponent and break down kind of some part of, of the upcoming opponent. And kind of, what I do is I put video clips in the story where I can kind of describe things and then show what I'm talking about with film. And it's a pretty cool feature. I guess I was able to figure out how to put video on our website, so that really helps. I think it's a different dynamic that no one else really does on the beat. So, check that out for Monday. We talked about, obviously I broke down Corey Clement's return. I talked about Dari and what he's been able to do in pass protection this year. Also looked at Joel Stavi's performance and Jack Sitchie, who had to start an inside linebacker because Chris Orr's out. kind of looked at his play too. So check that out on madison.com. We posted that on Monday, and then tomorrow we will have another one looking ahead to Maryland. Gonna tweet out our link again, get some more people in here. You guys got any questions about the team? A little light on viewers today, I guess. Any predictions out there for the Maryland game? And this Maryland team is one that, obviously they had to fire their coach a few weeks ago. Had an interim takeover. When you look at the rankings, the national rankings, they rank near the bottom. They rank near the bottom in a lot of categories. Obviously, I talked about the turnovers, but it seems like, rushing defense, passing defense, and then rushing and passing offense, total defense, however you want to slice it, they're usually in the bottom half nationally. So it's a team that's struggled a lot. The last two games, I think they've looked a little bit better. And they made the coaching change on the bye week a few weeks ago, and then they came back and almost upset Penn State. Penn State team that only has a couple losses this year and has played really well. That was a 31-30 game, and then went to Iowa on the road, a top 10 team, and they didn't really have a chance to win that game, but they sort of hung in there, lost by 16 in the end, but. They've looked a little bit better, so I don't think it's a game that the Badgers can really just completely look over. I think that, obviously it is their 10th straight game without a bye week. That can start to take a toll mentally and physically. That could make this game maybe a little bit tougher. And the fact that Maryland's playing a little bit better, maybe makes it a little bit closer than I'm anticipating. But, I think that in the end the Badgers will be able to pull it out. You guys got any questions about the team? Anything? I'm seeing a closer game than you, I think. Something like 27-20 Wisconsin. Well, it's interesting. Yeah, it could happen. Even though Maryland has turned the ball over a lot, they have put up some points in some of these games. Like I did mention, the 31-30 game against Penn State. They've used, a ton of different quarterbacks this season. They've kind of gone back and forth because all of them keep throwing interceptions. But the guy they've kind of settled on was the guy they started the season with, Perry Hills. And he's a guy that obviously he's thrown 10 interceptions this year and maybe 5 or 6 starts, which is a really bad rate. But he's a big dual threat guy. He's rushed for more than 100 yards in the last 3 games, each of the last 3 games. So that's another challenge that the Badgers are going to haven't seen for a while, I guess. Tommy Armstrong, I guess, probably would have been the last guy that can really move around, and we saw him kind of make some plays with his feet, and kind of that gave a little bit of trouble for the Badgers, I guess. I remember him picking up kind of a 3rd and long in a big situation when they were at Nebraska, and this is a guy that maybe can give them a little bit of trouble there. Maybe they will put some points on the board because of that. But I just think with as often as Maryland turns the ball over, and with Wisconsin's offense looking better with Corey Clement back, I would be pretty surprised if this was a 7-point game. Maybe you're right. I'm going a little bit over I think I'm going, over the spread here. I'm not sure exactly what the spread's at, but I'm pretty sure me predicting a 21-24 point win is a little bit higher than Vegas is saying. But again, I think that offense you're going to see that offense start clicking a little bit. Saying it's 12.5. That's a little lower than I would have anticipated. I know, again, Maryland has been playing better, but I really think Wisconsin's offense is going to start to get rolling here, and obviously the defense is still top notch. They're going to get some turnovers in this game. They're going to put the offense in good position. I would feel pretty good about betting Wisconsin, minus 12.5. But, then again, it is on the road. It's always a little bit tougher on the road. So you can't just take that for granted. Would I be surprised if it was? I would be a little surprised if this is close to the end, but maybe you'll be right about 7. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. We'll have to see if Maryland continues to improve because, they played well the last couple games since their bye week, since they've made the coaching change. So, even though it looks impossible for Maryland to make a bowl game, this is kind of the game. They're 2-6 right now, so they have to win out if they want to become bowl eligible, which won't happen. But in the players' minds, maybe there's a little bit more urgency now that they have those 6 losses. This is sort of becomes that must win, or your season's over pretty much. There's nothing to play for if they lose this game, so that may have a little bit of effect too. We'll have to kind of wait and see how it plays out, I guess. Guys got any other questions for me? Or statements or predictions or anything? Just worried about Wisconsin giving best effort, kind of a blog game on the East Coast. Maryland will be hyped. Yeah, that's a good point. Again, they could be, with their 10th straight game here, they could be looking ahead of that bye week. They could be looking at this game, we'll win it easily. Then we'll get to the bye, and then we can really focus on Northwestern and Minnesota. I guess I could see that potential trap game that you're talking about. Having to travel quite a ways to a place that they're not familiar with, they haven't played at, which is kind of, these are kind of the reasons why, before the season I thought this would be a tricky game for Wisconsin. But Maryland's just been, I guess, bad enough where I'm not really worried about it. But, I see your argument, though. I definitely see, kind of those factors there that make you think Wisconsin maybe could be overlooking this game a little bit, or maybe are in a position where, maybe they don't play their best game. But you'll have to – it'll be interesting to see how well they start. I think that'll kind of determine a lot because, if they come out and start hot, I think they'll kind of roll. But, if Maryland gets a stop, they score first, it may turn into a little bit more of a battle. Someone asked if the Badgers are going to be in the top 25 with a win. Yeah, I would assume so. Now, the college football poll, the playoff poll, I'm not really sure. They just released the top 25, and then I don't think there's any, as far as I know, there's no other receiving votes, or I don't know how close Wisconsin is. I don't know if they were their 26th team or their 36th team. I don't really know. But I think in the AP poll, I think they had the most votes that were not on the poll. So if they win this game and anybody near the bottom of that poll, loses, then I'm pretty sure that Wisconsin will probably jump in there. So I think there's a really good chance that on Sunday you'll see the Badgers back in the AP poll. Not sure about the playoff poll. I don't know how close they were to getting in, but obviously, even if Wisconsin won out and won the Big Ten title, pretty sure they're not gonna be going to the playoffs. So that's probably not really relevant, I guess. But yeah, I would. My prediction is that they'll be back in the AP top 25 on Sunday. It's amazing to think, going back to that Iowa game, it's a game that obviously if Corey Clement was healthy, I think they definitely win the game. And even if he's, even as is, if Stabby doesn't doesn't get his foot stepped on the 1 yard line, they probably score there. They probably eke out that game, and they're looking at an 8-1 record. They're probably approaching the top 10 if they win that game. And the margin for error was so slim for Iowa there. The Badgers turned the ball over 4 times. Just a couple things. A number of things here or there. If one of them goes the other way, the Badgers win that game. They're undefeated in the Big Ten. They're in the driver's seat to get back to the title game. You could start talking about them being especially getting Clement back now, being in the picture for the playoffs if they were to win out and win the Big Ten. So it's amazing kind of how things change on one loss, a loss that they easily could have won. So it's kind of coulda, woulda, shoulda, I guess. But it's kind of interesting to see how that one loss to start Big Ten play has kind of changed the complexion of the season. But there's still a lot to play for. Obviously they're not out of the race in the West. I think Iowa. I think it's still possible for them to lose 2 games. They probably won't, but I think this game is huge for Wisconsin in terms of the Iowa game. Iowa goes at Indiana, a team that can put up a lot of points. On the road for Iowa. I think that's a very losable game, and if they lose that one, they've got 3 games left to slip up. Not a whole lot of tough teams left on the schedule. They got Purdue. I know they end with Nebraska, but I think this is a big game. Iowa kind of needs to lose this Indiana game if the Badgers still have a chance. Still think Iowa will lose 1 or 2. Indiana is a bad matchup for them. Yeah, I'm kind of thinking Indiana's got a pretty decent chance to win this game. I think this is probably Iowa's most losable game left. I can't remember the last game that they have. I know they play. I think they play somebody next week that I'm not thinking about, and then they play Purdue at home. Oh, they play Minnesota at home. That's a losable game too. They play, so at Indiana, then they get Minnesota at home, Purdue at home, at Nebraska. It's totally possible. But this is an important game. If they're able to go on the road and win this one, it becomes a really slim chance that they're going to lose 2 games. But if they lose this one and they're looking at those last 3, you're looking at Minnesota at home, who could play them tough, and Nebraska's played really poorly this season. But going on the road to Nebraska, definitely not a gimme game. So the Badgers need to keep trucking along here, and they could be going to that Northwestern game with a real shot at winning the West. Minnie on the up and up looked so much better against Michigan. Yeah, I agree. I didn't get a chance to watch a whole lot of that game. Still, covering the Wisconsin game. But yeah, they very easily could have won that game. Michigan's a really good team, obviously. The game is at Iowa, but I think Minnesota's a team that could definitely give them trouble, and I think Indiana's a team that could give them trouble. So, who knows? It's not impossible to think that Wisconsin could be in the Big Ten West lead going into that Northwestern game after 2 more weeks here. That's probably not going to be the case, but I think there's a pretty decent chance that Iowa loses one of these next 2 games, and then anything can happen from there if each team has 1 loss. But the dream to make it back to Indy is definitely not dead yet. So we'll just have to kind of wait and see if they beat Indiana or if Indiana is able to slip them up. What else you guys want to talk about? Any other questions or predictions or discussion topics? I will say I thought Jack Sitchy did a really good job at inside linebacker. I had touched on this in the film room piece that I talked about earlier that we posted on Monday, but I was really impressed. He had to completely switch positions from outside linebacker to inside linebacker last Monday and had a week to get prepared, and he looked really good. It didn't seem like there was really any drop-off between Orr and him. And I think, I get some stats from Pro Football Focus, and that it's a I don't know how they come up with their calculations, but it's a company that works with NFL teams before the draft and for scouting purposes. So I think they're a pretty trustworthy site, and they gave Sitchy he had the highest grade, overall grade of any defensive player on the Badgers in that game against Rutgers last week. So. And just going back and kind of watching him a little bit more closely, like I did Monday. He was making plays from the weak side, chasing guys down. He was blowing up some plays that were run at him, and I thought he did a really good job. Obviously, he did play inside linebacker in high school, so he's been there before. That does help him out. And I think maybe his freshman year he played a little bit of that too in practice. So a little bit familiar with the position, but I think if Chris Orr is out for an extended period of time and we don't know how long he's going to be out, we're hoping to get a little bit more clarity on that tonight when we get to talk to defensive coaches and players. Hopefully Dave Aranda will have a little bit clearer picture for us on when he'll return, but maybe he won't. But I think as long as Orr's out, Sitchy's going to stay on the inside there, and the Badgers defense will be fine without Orr for now. You guys got anything else for me? I'll tweet out our link again. Okay. Some people just joined us. If you guys have any questions about the Badgers football team or the Big Ten or the national landscape or anything you guys want to talk about, just put them in the comment box and we'll get the discussion rolling. This is your guys' live chat. We can talk about what you guys want to talk about. So. Obviously not. We want to stay a little bit on topic. Sometimes we get a little bit off topic here, talking about stuff that doesn't have anything to do with football. But if you guys want to talk about anything about the Badgers or the college football landscape, I'm all ears. Or if you just want to throw out any comments you have on the team or any predictions you have for this Maryland game coming up. We did have one. Let's see, we got a question here. What do you think of Chris recruiting so far? I think he's done a really good job. During the season, it's hard for me to kind of stay really entrenched in everything that's happening in the recruiting world. But as far as the class he's put together, it's ranked pretty highly. Obviously, losing Antonio Williams is a killer. I mean, before he decommitted. Wisconsin's class was up there, approaching. I think a lot of people had them in the top 20 or close to it at that point, and losing your best player in the class is going to drop you off pretty far. And obviously, they're looking for a replacement, kind of another running back right now, another big name running back, and we'll have to kind of see who they're able to get to kind of replace Williams, and that could determine kind of how good this class is in the end. If they're able to get that top ranked, one of those better ranked running backs, or if they're not able to do that, that could make a big difference in whether this class is looked at as just mildly successful or very successful. But I think so far he's done a good job. He's got he's got some big names, some 4-star guys in the class. I think he's done, even when he took over the job in December, I've been saying it. We saw right up through January and into signing day last year, we saw a lot of walk-on offers to in-state guys kind of handed out, and I think they're going to kind of focus on that a little bit too, getting more of those in-state guys in there. We've seen a ton of them in the past work out really well. I think even in practice, we get to watch spring and fall practice, and I thought in fall practice a guy like Henry Howden really performed well. For Madison, he's out of Madison Memorial, true freshman walk-on guy who plays receiver, and he was already looking really good. I think he probably has a future, and I think recruiting-wise, I think he's done. Chris and his staff has done pretty good so far. How important are the number of stars a recruit has to their ultimate success? It doesn't really have any. It doesn't really have any. Stars don't really matter in the end. I mean, obviously we've had some 5-star guys that have been bust, and we've had some, and we have some, walk-on guys. Jared Aberderis was a walk-on. Alex Erickson's a walk-on. Believe Marcus Trotter was a walk-on, if I'm not mistaken. There's been so many successful walk-ons at Wisconsin and other places. And so the stars don't really matter, but I think, a 5-star has a lot better chance of being successful than a walk-on. I think when you look at the success rate, if you were able to figure that out, I'm pretty sure the 5-star success rate would be pretty high, and the 2-star walk-on success rate probably would not be very high. So anybody can be a star. It depends on kind of how how hard you work when you get on campus, and a lot of times it's really hard to rate high school guys. Sometimes those guys are misrated, I guess. But I think there's been plenty of success stories for 5-stars and walk-ons. It's kind of all over the place, but I still think it matters a little bit in terms of if a guy's a 5-star, he's got a lot of talent, and he's obviously going to have a good chance at being a great player. Someone asked me what if the college football rankings were to not change, what matchup would I be most interested in? Well, I guess there's only 2 to choose from. I think both would be really intriguing. Obviously, I guess it would be Clemson and Alabama, and then LSU, Ohio State. You can't argue with either of those matchups. It's hard to pick between those. I'm a graduate of the University of Alabama. If I had to pick one of those games to watch, I'd probably watch Alabama Clemson. It'd be interesting to see too how for real Clemson is. They've been really good this year. I was a little surprised to see them ranked number 1. Over Ohio State, over LSU, but they've been really good. Obviously, they haven't played the toughest schedule in the world in the ACC. They have played some good games though. It hasn't been a cupcake schedule by any means or anything like that. But it'd be interesting to see them going up against a team like Alabama. If they were able to pull off that, it'd be interesting to see if they were even favored in that game as the number 1 seed. And then it'd be interesting to see also if they're able to win the game, or if they start Clemsoning again, so to speak. I think somebody else asked me, let's see, there was one before this, but I'll go ahead and answer this one while I try to think of the other one again. What bowl game do I think the Badgers are going to end up in? It's a good question. As of right now, I guess assume they're not going to be going to the Big Ten championship game. We talked about earlier how they still have a chance. Iowa could still slip up, but if they don't go to the Big Ten title game, you're probably looking at. I think maybe the most likely is the Holiday Bowl in San Diego. I think Ohio State. It also depends too on if you're able to get 2 Big Ten teams in the BCS or not, because that kind of really alters how many spots are available. If let's say Ohio State and Michigan State get into the BCS, it opens up kind of an extra spot. But then you have Iowa, who would probably go ahead of Wisconsin. I think the next best bowl after those BCS ones for the Big Ten is the Citrus Bowl. Then you have the Outback Bowl, where there's a good chance Michigan could take that spot. Penn State also only have 2 losses this year, so there's competition there as well. And then you have the Holiday Bowl. I have seen some people even predict them to go to the Pinstripe Bowl in New York on the 26th. That would be a pretty major disappointment, but I guess if Michigan and Penn State are kind of selected ahead of them, I guess that could happen. I think Wisconsin would probably have to lose another game for them to go that low. But I think the Holiday Bowl is probably if I had to pick one, I'd say probably the Holiday Bowl. Any chance the Badgers go to the Rose Bowl next year? I would say very unlikely, just because of their schedule. Schedule is extremely tough next year. They play LSU to open the season, which that doesn't count for the conference standings. But then they go at Michigan State. They play Ohio State at home, and then you still have Iowa on the road, and then Nebraska at home, which maybe they'll be a little bit better next year than they are this year. And I think all 5 of those games are maybe even their first 5 games in the conference. So it's just like a murderer's row, kind of, to have to go to Michigan State, and then play Ohio State at home. It's going to be really tough. I think the Badgers could have a really good team next year and go 8-4, honestly, just because the schedule's so tough. So it's going to be interesting to see how they navigate that, especially with all those tough games early on in the conference schedule. And I think whether Corey Clement comes back or goes to the NFL is going to have a huge bearing on next season as well. I think they're really going to need him back in order to kind of get through that schedule alive. So Rose Bowl is I would say it's pretty unlikely next year, just based on the schedule. I know we did have, there was one other question that I know I missed. I did forget it. If you guys, if whoever asked that question, you can just ask it again, and I'll be happy to answer it. Just had a few come in there at once. How slap on the wrist like is JT Barrett's punishment? It pretty much is a slap on the wrist, I guess. Was it? I think it was it a one game suspension. I think. It's pretty light. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't really know what the standard is for that offense is, but I mean, one game is pretty light, and I think he probably should have gotten maybe 2 or 3 at least. But it's 2 weeks, but they have a bye. Okay, so the punishment is 2 weeks. It's pretty clever of them to suspend him for 2 weeks when they have a bye on one of those weeks. So yeah, that's good timing by Barrett and Ohio State to have that happen right before the bye week. So yeah, I'm going to look at that as a 1 week suspension, a 1 game suspension. So I think it's pretty light. Shouldn't it be NCAA's decision instead of Urban's? No, I don't think that's. I think usually, arrests or DUIs, stuff like that is usually on the school. In the past, I'm not really sure why it's like that. I'm not really sure the pros. I haven't really thought about the pros and cons of the NCAA regulating that, but I'm pretty sure it's usually the school that's handing down. They're not breaking any. I mean, when they're breaking the law, they're not really breaking NCAA rules or NCAA violations, but the school is kind of responsible for, I guess not having a team full of criminals, I guess, on their. So I think it's typically after the school there to kind of dole out the punishment, but I think there might be NCAA regulations. I'll have to look into this, but maybe there's certain things where they say, if this happens, there's like a minimum punishment or something like that. But I'm not really sure about that. I kind of have to look into that to see if that happens. But yeah, I don't know. Again, anybody else got anything else? Any other questions? I know we do have one question out there that went into the abyss that I forgot, and be free to ask that again. Now, I wasn't ignoring it. I just forgot what it was while I was answering another question. So feel free to ask it again if I didn't answer it. Did you cry when Grantland was shut down like I did? I didn't cry, but I was pretty disappointed. I was a pretty big Grantland fan. I've been a pretty big Bill Simmons fan for a while. So that was really disappointing. I'm a big reader of Zach Lowe, who writes for the NBA. I don't know if you guys are NBA fans or not, but that was the main guy I read on there. So, but I'm sure all those writers will kind of land other places. So if you're a fan of a couple writers there, they'll land other places. But the freedom that those guys had to write long-form stuff and do the things that they did, that might not really be there anymore. So hopefully Simmons hires all of them and starts another website, but we'll have to kind of see how it plays out, I guess. You guys want to hear anything else about the Badgers? Roll Tide, someone says. Were any Badgers fans really pissed to see Alabama number 4 last night? Did that kind of get under your guys' skin to see that one loss SEC team ranked number 4 there? Guess not. Seemed like some people were mad on Twitter, but I guess people are always going to be mad about something. Of course it did. It will all work its way out. Why did DJ Gillens play so much at wide receiver punt return? That's a good point. I mean, that's a good question. I think that, obviously a few weeks ago he kind of came to the coaching staff and he said, he wanted to find a way to help the team out. He was the third string quarterback, wasn't getting on the field. and he's an athletic guy that can help in other areas. So he kind of volunteered, and they started working him in on special teams and at wide receiver. And I think it took him a couple of weeks to get it down before they felt comfortable putting him out there. But now I think he's probably going to stay on those special teams units. They probably think that he can help them there. At wide receiver, it was kind of interesting because he did play a lot of snaps there, but he never got targeted. I don't know if he was in some formations where I think they ran the ball a lot when he was on the field at receiver. I haven't really broken this down or looked into his play or anything at wide receiver, but maybe he's a better blocker than some of the other receivers they have, so maybe they like to get him in on some of those running situations where they still have a wideout on the field. I'll have to go back and kind of look at that. I'm not sure, but yeah, he wasn't targeted in the passing game, but he was in there quite often. So I guess they think he can help them in some way. We'll have to see if he actually catches any passes or not. I think as a special teams player, he'll continue to do that. But yeah, it's something to monitor for sure. I can't really give too much analysis on it now because he hasn't even been targeted in the passing game. Haven't really gone back and broken down his blocking or anything like that or his special teams play. But I think he's a guy that's going to, obviously keep getting some more reps. When will they implement the 3 quarterback set, Tanner, DJ, Stabby? Gosh, I don't know. I would doubt that ever happens, but never say never, right? I do like the package they use McAvoy in. I really like him as a Wildcat quarterback. It's been working. I mean, he's broken off some long runs. I think with Clement back now, it's maybe less of a need. But I think when they were really struggling running the ball earlier, they probably should have gone to McAvoy at Wildcat a little bit more, just to kind of give a little bit of a spark, give the defense a little bit something different to look at. But I still like the package. I think he's been really good in it, and I think that he's broken some runs, and I think that's something that you could see a little bit more of. I'm not sure if he's going to throw passes here or not. I think at some point maybe he will, but we'll have to see how it plays out. Let's see, you guys got any other questions for me? We got about 15 minutes left here, so we got plenty of time to take some more questions or comments or predictions or anything else you guys want to throw out there. This is the fans live chat, so we'll talk about whatever you guys want to. If you have any suggestions for me. Like I mentioned earlier in the live chat, I did talk to John Settle, the running backs coach, earlier last night, I guess it was, and he told me that even when Corey Clement's 100%, Dari's still going to remain the starter, and Dari's going to keep getting more snaps than Clement. I don't know if that was him just lying to me or if that's really what's going to happen. I was a little taken aback by what he said to me. If you want to look at all of his comments, they're on madison.com. Story that was posted last night about Dari remaining the starter the rest of the season. Someone says just coach talk. It was weird because at first I was kind of confused by what he was saying, and I kept pressing and kind of kept getting him to say, did everything I could to get him to say, well, maybe if this happens, Clement will kind of start taking the bulk of the carries. But he was pretty adamant, and maybe he's just, saying that. Maybe he's just motivating Clement, or maybe he just wants Clement to earn it. But he specifically told me, Clement, it's one thing if Clement plays well, but Dari would have to play very poorly to lose his starting job. So, maybe he's trying to motivate Clement or something like that, but I think if he says something like that about Dari, that he has to play really poorly to lose his job, and then Dari doesn't play poorly, I don't know what it's going to say about – I don't know how Dari's going to take that if he hears that in the media and then he still loses that job. So I thought they were – I mean, I'm not sure if he's telling the truth or not, but I think either way they're pretty interesting comments one way or another. He said a lot of – I talked to him pretty extensively about it. Again, you can go to madison.com and look at that story, but He said he really likes what Dare does in the pass game in terms of his catching and his pass blocking, and he likes those. He doesn't kind of pigeonhole that to third down. He thinks that he can really help on those areas on first and second down, and that when he gets in open field, he has Settle sees elite elusiveness in Ogunbowale when he's in the open field. And I did ask him, if he thought Dare was on par with Clement talent-wise. He said maybe not talent-wise, but he thinks Dare does, has a different skill set that he really likes. So I don't know. Believe what you want to believe, but I think either way, those are really interesting comments from Coach Settle that you can check out in the story we posted last night. You guys got anything else for me? Anything else you guys want to talk about? Still got a little while left here. Any predictions for the Maryland game? How big of a factor is Will Likely? He's a really big factor. Obviously, he's one of the better cornerbacks in the Big Ten, and maybe even the country. Especially if it'll be interesting to see. I haven't watched too much film on Maryland yet to know whether they have Likely follow the best receiver around, or if he plays one side, or if he ever goes in the slot. I haven't really kind of looked at that Maryland tape close enough yet. But if they tell him to follow Erickson around, we talked to Joel Stabby a little bit on Monday, and he said that Maryland's not afraid to let their corners go one-on-one, put them on an island, and I think Likely's a guy that if they just stick him into Erickson all game, and Erickson has a little bit more trouble getting open than he has in the past, who else is going to step up? Obviously Robert Wheelwright's injured now. If that happens, you got to rely on guys like Jazz Peavy, Troy Fumagalli at tight end. Obviously a guy like Dare out of the backfield, or Derek Watt or somebody like that. So he can play a big factor, and obviously he's a great special teams player, really top-notch return man, who could give. The Badgers have been one of the best teams in the country at kick coverage, and it's because they play so many starters on special teams. It's a lot of the reason. At least they have, I think, 5 defensive starters on their punt team. Their kickoff team, I think, ranks number 3 in the country, or before last week it was number 3 in the country. I have to check what it's at now in terms of covering kickoffs. So that'll be an interesting battle too, and I think you could even see Likely a little bit on offense. But I think especially on defense and special teams, he's a guy that he seems like he's probably their best player. And he's a guy that can take away things on defense and hurt you on the special teams side of it too. So he's a really big factor. Guys got anything else for me? I did say my prediction earlier was probably, I haven't made it final yet. It's my final prediction will be in Saturday's paper, but probably somewhere around 34-13, 38-13. But we had one viewer earlier say he thought it was going to be more a closer game, 27-20. Do you guys get a sense that this is going to be a close game, or that it's going to be a blowout, or how do you guys kind of see this game? One guy said the Badgers are a bit off this year. Yeah, injuries to some of your top players will do that to you. When you lose your starting tight end, starting running back, number 2 wide receiver, multiple offensive linemen, makes it tough. Makes it real tough, and I think they're starting to get some of those guys back. With Clement coming back, obviously that's obviously a really huge deal, and I think the offense is going to start to see the offense be more explosive with him in there. The real question is who replaces Bo Ryan next year. Yeah, that is a good question. I'm probably not the one to ask about that. I don't cover the basketball team too much. My colleague Jim Polzine does that for us. Still follow the team a little bit, but I wouldn't be able to give you any insight on who their next coach will be. And, who knows? Maybe Ryan will stay more than one more year. Just gonna have to wait and see how he feels, I guess. You guys got anything else? Still got a little bit of time left here. Any other questions about the Badgers or this Maryland game? Someone says, I'm a Pats fan. Well, it's having a pretty good season then. And what about that Packers game, Wisconsinites? That was rough. That was a rough night. I had earlier in the day, I had two guys on my fantasy team, Le'Veon Bell and Steve Smith, out for the year, and then my Packers got blown out, so that was a bad day. But what happened with Aaron Rodgers? I think it's just the Denver defense, honestly. I think it's just the best defense in the NFL. I think a lot of it's the Packers receivers not getting open, but I think maybe the bigger issue was the offensive line not protecting Rodgers. He was just running for his life all night. It was just rough. I mean, the receivers couldn't get open. Rodgers was running around. I don't think a whole lot of it's on Rodgers, honestly, even though he did only have 77 yards passing. I think he's the best quarterback in the league still. It's just was a bad matchup and just a bad night in general. The Packers should probably hope if they do make the Super Bowl that they don't see Denver. Any other Badgers football questions? I'm about ready for a bye week, honestly. Someone asking about Pats and Redskins. Redskins are better than people give them credit for, I think. I think the Pats will definitely win, but they could be maybe it could be a little bit closer than some people think. Kind of excited to get to pass that bye week to that Northwestern and Minnesota games for the Badgers. Really intrigued to see if Iowa loses a game, one of their next two games, or potentially both of their next two games. If we go into that Northwestern game and Iowa has a loss, I think those games become much more exciting, much more interesting, and it'd be much more fun to kind of cover those games and keep an eye on Iowa as well and see if they slip up. So I'm hoping Iowa loses a game, a game over the next 2 weeks, just so we can see the Badgers we can kind of make the season a little more exciting. So hopefully that happens. Right now, this Maryland game, I guess some people think it'll be a little bit closer than I do, but not too interesting yet. And until Iowa loses a game, it's hard to get too excited about their chances of making the Big Ten title game. But I think this game against Indiana, Iowa is, I think it's a losable game. And then they have Minnesota at home next week, a team that's been playing better. So we'll see how that plays out. Thank you for the hearts. Appreciate that. A couple more people just joined. We do have just a few minutes left if you want to ask any Badgers football questions. If you guys got anything else for me. I'm not a player, no. I just cover the team for the newspaper here in Madison, so not a player. But thanks for asking. Well, I think we're about out of time here. Just a couple minutes left, so I'll go ahead and wrap it up. Appreciate you guys joining me on Periscope again. It was fun. I enjoyed taking your questions and kind of talking about the team. But join me again we're going to take next week off because of the bye week. I'm not going to do this next week. But 2 weeks from now, Wednesday at noon, prior to the Northwestern game, we will do this again. So I will talk to you then.